Hi, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome to the Intuitive Talks podcast. Surgical robotics presents an enormous opportunity for companies. There are surgeon shortages, sporadic healthcare, and miraculous technological advancement in both robotics and communications. So to understand where this sector is headed, we invited senior executives from Intuitive to share their company's impressive story. Change is coming. Consider these upcoming episodes to be guideposts for the future to follow. Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi of Device Talks. Welcome back to the Intuitive Talks podcast. This is episode 3. In our previous episodes, we've talked about the company's origins. We've talked about their work with surgeons. Now we're going to talk a little tech. My guests are Brian Miller. He is the Chief Digital Officer, and Tony Jarc. He is the Director of Data and Analytics at Intuitive. Today, we'll talk about how Intuitive is managing the data being generated or collected by its surgical robotic systems and what this portends for the future. Data is a big part of the surgical robotic story. We talk about the arms and such, but the data being collected will definitely help surgeons do a better job. So it was great to talk with Tony and Brian about this, and of course about their paths into the surgical robotics industry. Interesting enough, both of them came into medtech to work specifically on surgical robotics. We'll hear more about that in a little bit. But first, I'd like to bring in Paul Lafon, Vice President of Sales at SMC. SMC has been kind enough to sponsor this episode of Intuitive Talks. Paul, tell us about SMC.
SMC is a medical device contract manufacturer providing end-to-end solutions for finished devices. It was founded in 1988. It is a private company, and we target from a market standpoint 3 specific segments: the drug delivery sector for pharma, the diagnostic market, and the medical device surgical markets. About 60 to 70% of what we do is finished device versus components and sub-assemblies. We have manufacturing plants in Santa Rosa, California, 2 in Wisconsin, 1 in Massachusetts, and for low-cost countries, we've got Coyol, Costa Rica, and Bangalore, India. And our design center is located in Ohio. All our plants are FDA certified and ISO 13485, and we've got 2 of our facilities that have Part 4 compliance for combination devices and drug handling. We provide design services, end-to-end solutions from development, tooling, assembly, packaging, even managing sterilization, and full manufacturing services.
That's great. We'll hear more from Paul a little later in the podcast. If you want to find out more about SMC, go to smcltd.com. That's SMC Limited. So smcltd.com. Brian Miller and Tony Jarc, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
I'm excited to begin this conversation. We've spent the first 2 episodes sort of looking in the past a bit, talking about where Intuitive's come from, how it's working with surgeons, how it has, and how it may. Now I feel like we're doing some more or some forward-looking discussions as to where this plays into the surgical suite going forward, and how technologies like VR and AR and the amount of data you're collecting is going to really change things up. Before we get into all that cool tech stuff, though, I'd love to understand your backgrounds and how you found your way to Intuitive and into surgical robotics. Brian, why don't you kick things off?
Yeah, happy to do so. I start off, been in the field for 21 years, and I actually came straight from graduate work to a company called Computer Motion. Mm-hmm. There were 2 companies at the beginning of the to build the industry, and started there, and then Intuitive acquired us in 2003 and 2004. I've had been fortunate to participate in 4 generations of robotic platforms. Seen several different parts of it, from our robotic systems to our vision systems to our advanced imaging. And now I'm responsible for our digital data and advanced imaging portfolios. But I'd have to say one of the things that's been exciting over the years is it's just fascinating to see how technology enabling surgery has evolved over the past 25 years.
How is the pace matched against your expectations of 20 years ago? Are we where we are? or far ahead of where you expected us to be? I'm sorry, where we are. Are we far ahead of where you expected us to be, or are we perhaps a little bit behind?
Yeah, I'd say we're in good space. One of the things that we find is we continue to learn, and as we spend the time with our customers, understand their needs, and start to solve them, the things are complex, so they take time to make sure that you do them right and they have the impact. But I think we've made significant progress.
Excellent. And Tony, how did you find your way to Intuitive?
Absolutely. So I actually came straight from graduate school as well. I studied human motor control, kind of the intersection of neuroscience and engineering. And then out of grad school, joined the medical research team at Intuitive about 10 years ago, working as a data scientist on very similar problems to what my team works on today, quantifying surgeon efficiencies, workflow, and looking at advanced algorithms to make predictions.
Do you think you would have found your way into a medical device company or a technology company? What I find interesting in the people I've talked to on this podcast is, for the most part, this is really their first job in "quote unquote" a medical device company, or they've come from a surgeon. We have it from education. Obviously, Gary was at SRI. I mean, it seems like this is really a unique calling, and once someone answers the call, it's a career-long commitment, at least so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was back in grad school, looking out at the industry landscape, and Intuitive was really the only application or company where there was a computer placed between a person and their device, and so that computer allowed us to be able to quantify and hopefully improve the performance of the task. And so that really pulled me to Intuitive, and then I think all of the related technologies on top of it kept me here.
I agree with that. For me, it was something where in grad school, I also did human machine interface with robotic platforms and in virtual environments, but I didn't really, it wasn't focused in healthcare or surgery. And just found really late in my graduate career, found the founder of Computer Motion at a conference. And as soon as I learned about it, I was hooked. And 21 years later, I'm still here.
That's very cool. So let's talk a bit about what you do there. Actually, that's the question. Talk a bit about your responsibilities, Brian. What do you oversee? I mean, when we talk about robotic surgery, I guess we're all thinking about the big systems and the multiple arms moving around. But there's so much more going on under the hood. Talking about what you have worked on at Intuitive and what your responsibilities are now.
Yeah, so I'm currently the chief digital officer at Intuitive, and when we talk about digital, we really focus in on three areas where we add value to customers, and that's in the areas of outcomes, learning, and efficiency. And so that's where we take our digital capabilities, the data that the platform generates, and we're really stitching together our systems, our learning, and our services that we provide to our customers. And so that's my current view. It brings in a range of technologies. As an example, for outcomes, we have a product that we call Iris, where it takes preoperative scans, it segments and does a 3D reconstruction, and provides that information to the surgeon so that they can do better planning for pre-procedure as they're looking on what approach they're going to take, and then they bring it into the operating room to help them navigate. And so throughout that, in what we call digital, there's a range of tools for surgeons to gain extra information. There's a range of training technologies. And as Tony said, there's some areas that he works in that I'll let him speak to, but start to use data to really understand how we can help individuals and improve and perform better. So that's my current role. I have had, as I mentioned earlier, an opportunity to run a robotic platform development. And so being a roboticist by background, was able to run those teams, which is very cross-functional, electrical, mechanical, software engineers, really focusing in once again on spending time with the customer inside of the operating room and just looking at every step of the way. What are they trying to accomplish? How can technology enable them? And then ultimately giving them a great experience once we develop and release the product.
That's excellent. Tony, if you could kind of build on that and helping us understand exactly the areas that you're focused on. I know you touched upon it earlier, but I really would like to know where you're involved in the robot creation. All right, let us take a quick break from this conversation and bring back our sponsor, SMC. I'm talking with Paula Fond, Vice President of Sales. Paul, tell me, how does SMC work with medical device companies?
We're an extension of their manufacturing discipline within the company once we move a product into production. In most cases, there's either design work that needs to be done, or if the design is frozen, we will spend 6 months or more in the developing of that device for high-speed or large volume manufacturing. In that period of time, we try to work to drive out costs through either materials, purchase components, and whenever possible, we'll automate. And whether it's automating the entire line or just automating sections of it, but that's our goal through the production cycle. Once successful with your first program with the customer, they automatically bring you into the next device, either through an acquisition or another development program.
Great. And finally, Paul, I understand you are seeing a lot of growth at SMC. Tell us what's going on at the company.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We've had a lot of expansion going on within the company. One of our key expansions is 40,000 square feet to our facility in Costa Rica. There's been a shift coming back from China and the med device side, and we've already started to fill most of that expansion, and we're looking at even more facility and land in Costa Rica. Our facility in Cambridge, UK will be completed by June, July of this year. That's a fill-finish engineering test facility for our pharma customers. And we've got for the remaining 3 plants in the U.S., California, Massachusetts, Wisconsin. We've got expansions going on in all 3 of those locations, mainly driven by our diagnostic customers.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing your story, Paul, and thanks for sponsoring SMC. For more information, you can go to their website, smcltd.com. That's excellent. Tony, if you could kind of build on that and helping us understand exactly the areas that you're focused on. I know you touched upon it earlier, but I really would like to know where you're involved in the robot creation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Director of Data and Analytics, and I help lead one digital solutions team within the digital org, within Brian's organization. Our team is focused on operative intelligence technologies, so developing and deploying machine learning enabled solutions and platforms that seek to improve aspects of surgery. We focus on ways we can leverage data and machine learning to improve surgical education, improve workflow and efficiencies, and even support academic collaborations and outreach to study their impact on outcomes.
That's great. Brian, let's going back to where robotic surgery was before, what was envisioned, where it is now, and the advancement of AI and machine learning. And this is obviously a question, Tony, you can take as well. But how have the advances in those 2 areas really evolved what robotic surgery systems are able to do? And was that always part of the plan? 15 years from now, we'll have this type of data that will help us do this with our robotic surgery systems. Brian, if you could start us off.
Yeah, I would say that it has a significant potential to be able to have an impact on surgery and on other interventions. As you look back and, you start off, Tony had mentioned it, that from day one, we had put a digital link or computer between the surgeon and the patient, which opened up a new world of data that was never there before, could never be measured. And so over the years, and as the number of procedures have increased, topping over 10 million now, we were able to bring in that data, and it gave us the opportunity to add value to our customers in the areas I talked about around outcomes learning and efficiency. When you get into ML and AI, it's when we view how can we add value with data, there's a lot of data out there, right? And so data is important, but it's really the insights that you're able to pull out of that data. And it's combining the data, it's seeing what's important to create these insights that are actionable for a customer to be able to gain value from them, whatever they're trying to accomplish. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that we understand what data is relevant. We securely collect that data and run it through our ML models to really understand those insights that are valuable. valuable, then insights are only good if you can actually do something about it. And so part of our digital solutions and our strategy is once we know what insights are relevant, then we start to create solutions to help surgeons evolve, whether it's our virtual reality simulation, whether it's our remote telepresence where we're connecting peers so that they can learn from one another. But that's how it's evolved, in the data from all of the procedures that have been created. That's what's fueling the different technologies that we're developing today.
And Tony, if you get into this, how do the guidance or the recommendations or the conclusions of all the data drawn, how is that presented back to the surgeon? And how do you make sure it's presented in a way that is easy for them to digest and to follow if that's the route they choose to do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it finds its way back to our surgeon customers in many ways. I think really the way I think about the machine learning space is that it augments, surgeons' capabilities. And that could either be by being presented back as recommendations to be able to improve learning. It could also be represented in fundamentally new aspects of a UI and new tools that are delivered kind of at the right time during either pre-op, intra-op, or post-op surgery. And so I think to Brian's point, it's not necessarily focusing on the technology building block itself, but on what that technology is enabling to our customers. If we look forward a little bit, I think that the original question of AI, I think the opportunity to be able to be more predictive, the opportunity to be more real time to impact patients is really exciting. And I think related fields of AI, machine learning, data science have been rapidly accelerating, and I think that is healthcare, but also brings healthcare along with it.
And Brian, if you could get a little granular with the data that you're collecting, are we talking about showing that when the arm approaches a certain organ this way versus that way, the outcome is better? What are the data points that we're talking about? It's not just outcomes at the end, percentages of success. It's really a lot more kind of granular than that, right?
Yeah, let me take a step back and talk through kind of how we view it and what we use the data for. And so it was back in 2007. That was really the first time that the robot was connected to the internet. And it gave us an opportunity, and the primary purpose of that was really to make sure that we could service and make sure that the systems were available for use. And our simple goal was when the surgeon and the care team walks in the operating room, the system needs to work. And so that was where we got a lot of data coming back on just the system and how it was operating. So this is voltages, sensors, things where you can say, hey, we're looking to make sure the system is functioning, and we can be predictive of a need to service it. As we moved forward and surgeons are performing procedures, they are interacting with the technology. They're going into different control modes. They're accessing different features via buttons, and the ability to record that and understand how people are using our products so that we can really say, all right, we developed a product because we wanted to solve a customer's need. How do we demonstrate that? And we invest a lot of our resources into making sure that our products are actually providing the value that we believe they are in the market. So we use that data of people interacting with our technology to be able to understand how it's being used. And then as Tony started his work, many years ago, that was the type of data where you could see how are people interacting with the technology, and then you can start to analyze how efficient they're being and provide guidance on improving on that efficiency. And then recently, if you go in and now tie it to outcomes, then you can start to get the full breadth of why we do what we do is to enable our customers to deliver great outcomes. And so it's progressed over the years, and we use that data that we record from the system to then guide a personalized learning, or as Tony said, information in real time, so that they can perform the best to their abilities.
So it's easy for us to say, we have data, it's getting it, and we're reading it, we're interpreting it, and then we're advising, we're suggesting action upon it. That's obviously my clumsy paraphrasing of what you just said. But What is that operation like? It's so easy to say we collect data and then make it available, but to process it and understand it I imagine, is a huge undertaking. How big of a part of Intuitive is that operation now?
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Tony to kind of walk through how he views that. But it is, but just to kind of tee it up, the coming in and securely and recording that data, bringing it in, making sure that we're managing it responsibly. There's an investment. It is something that takes energy. It takes people that are dedicated and focused on making sure that we do that in the right way, and make that available for our development teams to drive value. So it is an important part of what we do, and we definitely are investing because we see the potential, and some of the work that Tony's been doing has demonstrated that. So I'll hand it over to Tony. He can give you a little bit more of how the data flows through and ultimately how it gets back to the customer to add value.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. One thing that we spend a lot of time on when we talk about data flowing through and how we spend our time is really not just treating it as a technology, but coupling the technology with the clinical perspective and making sure that we're solving a clinically meaningful problem. You can do a lot of things with data. You can model and build algorithms for a lot of different things, but we want to spend our time wisely and make sure we bring kind of that value back. Once we're aligned on that and we continue to kind of debate, discuss, test, try to ensure we're focused, the process of moving information around, strongly depends on, which data is relevant for that problem. We spend a lot of our time providing, post-operative video solutions. And so being able to move videos through algorithms that can predict the right, kind of the right context, being able to identify certain portions of surgery so that you provide feedback in the language of a surgeon for that portion of surgery is really kind of what we spend a lot of our bandwidth on.
And what we talk a lot about data, but I watched a video of your presentation you made, I don't know, it might have been a year or two ago at Stanford, talking about, talked at least a little bit about AR and VR and the roles that'll play going forward. Is that what can you share in terms of how those technologies will be built into Intuitive's systems going forward?
Yeah, I'll take that one, and then Tony, you can add to it. And so I'd start off by saying that we actually right now a core part of our offering that's been there for many years incorporates both VR and AR. And so our SimNow, our simulation is a virtual reality interface where we use the real console and we're able to present a surgical environment or some sort of skills drills to a surgeon to be able to go in and practice. And then our console is really an augmented reality device in and of itself. And as an example, we have our fluorescence imaging capability where we extract the information from the surgical scene, and that's overlaid inside of the visual chain from what the surgeon sees into the anatomy, and provides them with additional information to perform the procedure. And so that has been core. VR and AR have been core to our product offerings from the beginning. As we move forward, I think the exciting part is with all of the investments in head mount displays, things that are starting to now make XR, both VR and AR, more readily available and used for different applications. There's a big opportunity for bringing it into the training realm. So team training with the care team, where you can pose a particular task or environment, and you can have multiple people working together to solve a problem. And so it's been with our technology, and I can see us integrating it in many ways as we move forward in the future.
I think that's a great overview, and how it ties back into machine learning is that machine learning powers often some of the capabilities of augmented reality to recognize what's happening in the scene or integrate new things. And so I think as that field has emerged and as the technology, like Brian had said, has matured, it presents new opportunities. And we've explored in research and in product different sorts of AR, VR technologies that help proctors better educate surgeons. And I think one other area of leveraging VR and AR is how do we connect across our ecosystems. We have a SimNow virtual reality system to allow for practice outside the OR. How can we ensure that surgeons efficiently move through practice outside OR if they have the time, so that they're best prepared for that next surgery? And so ML algorithms, data science algorithms are critical for connecting the technologies, not just powering them.
Brian, talk a bit more about, if you would, the surgical navigation, the giving the vision. I'm sorry, giving the surgeon insights, vision into where they're operating, the operating field. Are you at a point where you're able to identify different organs, different tissue to help sort of really guide them through the actual process? Is it what is the navigation interface like?
Yeah, so let me talk through what we have enabled and a little bit of where we're headed. And so I had mentioned earlier in my example of how we're helping with outcomes, the capability to take a preoperative scan, be able to identify and segment it. And what I mean by segmenting is that we go in and identify the key structures, the key vessels in that piece of anatomy, and then present it to the surgeon in a way that they can manipulate it, they can view it, and it allows them to go in and identify the key structures to plan the procedure. In partial nephrectomy, there's an aspect called selective clamping, where you want to clamp the right vessel to take the blood supply away from the tumor, as opposed to taking it away from the entire kidney. And it allows them to identify that vessel and select it. They can then bring that into the operating room, and as they're going through with the surgery, they can use that as a reference point and say, okay, now this is where I'm at in the procedure. I can see this is the vessel that I'm looking for. And we started to see that the efficiency in being able to locate the right anatomy, do the right tasks, we're starting to see an improvement when they're using these models. And so those are the types of things that are occurring today. But we definitely are looking into new technologies in the future that allow us to be able to identify critical structures, to differentiate between cancerous, non-cancerous tissue. So things that are important. Our Firefly that's in the field allows a surgeon to see perfusion underneath the tissue, and that's really the additional information. When a surgeon goes into a procedure, they can see what with white light imaging, as we call it, they can see what is there and above the tissue. But being able to give them that information that is below the tissue that they can't see, that's where it's really enabling. And we have several efforts underway in that area.
Excellent. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. I guess my final point is just, our question is, the introduction of surgical robotics happened 20 years ago. We're seeing data in VR and AR sort of advance this next generation. Where are we headed in terms of surgical robotic systems and healthcare delivery and new tech coming in? Can you give us, Brian, if you would, just kind of look ahead 5 or 10 years? What new advances might we see without giving away any trade secrets? But where is this whole thing headed? It's really an exciting development.
Yeah, I would start with the concept which we're seeing today, but it'll give us an opportunity to build on where we're bringing in technology. A lot of what we've talked about today that adds context to the robotic platform. And so, over the past 25 years, we've had a very capable system that has been applied to a range of procedures. As we've started bringing in, ML, some of the digital capabilities, we're adding the context that the system is performing a particular procedure. And in doing so, then you can start to go in and provide information. You can provide capabilities that are relevant to that procedure and relevant to that patient, such as the iris model, in a way that has the potential of really improving outcomes moving forward. And so as you go in and start to bring that information, we're able to continue to process as compute processing continues to advance. You're starting to be able to do that in a real-time nature, such that you can actually impact the patient that's on the OR bed right then with information that you are able to extract, as well as pull that information outside of the operating room for ongoing personalized learning and an efficiency, just for that continuous improvement that you want to see. So I see that as a significant step into the future, and it gives us something to really build on and drive in the coming years.
That's great, Tony. Anything to add to that?
I would just echo what Brian had said. I think really being able to be more predictive, being able to predict beforehand or sense in the moment inefficiencies or potential complications and stop them before they happen, I think is kind of the future. And I think the capabilities that are emerging in machine learning and artificial intelligence are kind of that stepwise increment that we need to be able to try to build those technologies.
Excellent. Well, it's great that a company like Intuitive was around to draw you both into the medical device industry. And I want to thank you both for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, that is a wrap. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Intuitive Talks. Thanks to our guests, Tony Jarc and Brian Miller of Intuitive. And thanks, of course, to our sponsor, SMC. Please do us a few favors, would you? Would you please share this podcast on social media? You can post it up there on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you can find me on both. Find Tom Salemi on LinkedIn, or I'm at MedTechTom on Twitter. You can also subscribe or follow this podcast by subscribing or following our Device Talks weekly podcast. It's a great way to keep abreast and on top of the news in the medtech industry. Go to Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. We're on all of those applications and more. And again, you can follow and subscribe so future episodes are sent directly to you. You can also find this podcast on devicetalks.com. While on there, take a look at our other podcasts and our information about our digital meetings that are ongoing and our in-person meetings, which will happen in 2022. Once again, that is a wrap. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Intuitive Talks podcast.